Welcome to another On the Wing Supply video. Today I'm going to be talking about the tools you need to get started in leather crafting. When I started off in leather crafting, it was kind of just a hobby that I wanted to dabble in, so I didn't want to spend a ton of money not knowing if I was going to enjoy the hobby or not. So this is kind of the tools that I started off with and got me to where I am today. Keep in mind there's a bunch of specialty tools that are much more expensive than what you see on this table, and you can get into the thousands of dollars spent on tools and equipment to make leather goods. This is kind of just the basics that you need to get started so you can make yourself a wallet, a card holder, or something like that. So the first category I wanted to talk about is work surfaces. So of course you're going to need a table, but I assume you have some sort of table or desk in your house that you can work on. So the first additional item you're going to need is a cutting mat. So this is a self-healing cutting mat, and this allows you to use things like Exacto Blade. You're not going to worry about damaging your table, and this will last you a ton of time. As you can see from my other side, I've used it quite a bit, and this is what I cut all of my leather on. This cutting mat was $12 on Amazon. It's fairly small. They do make very large cutting mats as well. If you want to completely cover a desk, say 4 feet wide, or if you have a workbench, a little bit larger. So this is something that I would highly recommend just getting started. And like I said, this is $12. The next item is a poundo board. So this I purchased from Weaver, and this poundo board is $15 on Weaver's website. And what this is used for is anything that you're hammering, so a stitching chisel, a hole punch, whatever. This allows you to punch through. You're not going to damage your tools. It's made out of a rubbery material, pretty heavy duty, and this just allows you to have a surface to hammer on without damaging your table or your tools. Of course, when you're working with leather, you're going to need leather itself. So this is a small piece of leather. I cut it off of a little bit larger piece, but you can buy them in a 1 foot by 1 foot square, 1 foot by 2 foot, and that'll give you enough leather to make 3 or 4 card holders, maybe 2 or 3 wallets, and give you some time to practice. This is a Wicked and Craig English bridle leather. There's plenty of options out there. I typically bought my samples from Weaver or Buckle Guy. Have some pretty good leathers to start off with, and just experiment with different tanneries, different types of leather. See what you like working with the most. I would say on average, if you're spending about $20 for a small square of leather to get started, that's a good price. Gives you enough leather to make a few items. The next thing I want to talk about is some of the core tools that you're going to need for cutting out and preparing your leather. First up is a hammer. So there are plenty of mallets and mauls that you could purchase that are made specifically for leather crafting. They can get a bit pricey for anything that's a decent quality. So instead of going ahead and buying something that was more expensive, that was a very specific use case, I went ahead and I just stopped at Home Depot. There's a mallet from Estwing called the Estwing Pro, and this hammer was $15 at Home Depot. It's kind of a little bit softer on each end, great for leather crafting. I still use this to this day. I've bought a leather maul, didn't like it that much, so switched back to this. So fairly inexpensive, but works great. The next is a scratch awl, and this is another one that you could buy very expensive tools. There are specific ones made for leather crafting. However, same thing, I went to Home Depot and I spent $5.50 on this Husky scratch awl. So as you can see, just by the brand Husky, got it at Home Depot. All it is, comes to a point, and this allows you to mark your leather. So if you are marking a hole, marking a cut line, this is how you do it so that you don't use like a pen or something that's gonna put ink onto the leather. So this just puts a nice little scratch line in it and gives you your guides to cut. Speaking of that, the next item that I would recommend is a metal ruler. These are fairly cheap, maybe $8 on Amazon. It's made out of stainless steel. It's got a non-slip cork backing to it, and this is what you'll use when you have a template and you're marking a straight line, measuring anything. And it's good to have stainless steel because you'll be using sharp blades, and if you have plastic you could cut into it. So that is why the stainless steel ruler is a key piece there. Next up on the cutting, I would recommend an Exacto Blade. So I'll put the exact type of Exacto Blade this is and what blades it is in the description below. I picked this up for $8 on Amazon, and it cuts through leather really well, even pretty thick leather. And the great thing about using an Exacto is that it still allows you to do curved cuts. So if you want to round a corner or something like that, this is what I use. The next item that is specific to a leather crafting tool would be pricking irons. So there are plenty of different types of pricking irons out there. This would be called a chisel tip pricking iron, usually the least expensive option out there. It's just made out of stainless steel. These have 4mm width. This set I picked up on Amazon for $10. Like I said, when I was starting the hobby, I didn't know if I wanted something super expensive in case I didn't like it, but these pricking irons were great to start off with. It came in a set. One had 6, 4, 2, and 1, so you're able to go around corners. They worked pretty well. They're a little shallow, so that if you're going through pretty thick leather, they might not get all the way through, but you could punch each layer separately. And how you use this is you put it down, you hammer it through the leather, and it'll punch holes through, and that will be what you use to stitch through. To mark your holes, you're going to want a line, so you want an even gap from the edge of the leather to wherever your stitching line is going to be. So you'd use something called Calipers for that, and you turn this knob and it adjusts to a different width. This I also picked up on Amazon. This was about $8.50. So again, a fairly inexpensive tool, and there are plenty of more expensive options if you wanted to upgrade. I still use the first one I ever bought for $8.50 and have not had any issues. Moving on to sewing your leather now. So there's a few things you're going to want for sewing your leather. One being thread, and 2 being needles as the most important. So this is Ritza Tiger thread. I bought this from Weaver Leather, and this was $8. So you can buy it in a bunch of different weights and lengths. This also comes in a bunch of different colors. There's purple, green, orange, blue, red, white, black, brown. So choose what you want. And for the needles, these are just some generic needles I picked up at Michael's in a little leather making kit. I still use them to this day. And these are approximately $5 on Amazon. So the next thing is just a generic lighter. So just a lighter you can get at any store, gas station, etc. And probably about $1 there. And this would be used when you finish your threading. You would light it, heat up the end of the nylon thread so it melts a little bit, and then flatten that out, and that'll lock your stitch in. One thing that I wasn't sure that I wanted or really wanted to use is a stitching pony. So this is probably an optional item. You can stitch without a stitching pony if you wanted to. I have learned to prefer it just based on the quality of stitch you get. This was probably the most expensive item. This was $27, and what this does is it has this lever. It opens, you put your leather piece in there after you've punched all your holes. You lock it in and hold your leather piece, and it just sits your leather so you don't need to hold the leather piece with your hands. You can hand stitch without using a stitching pony, and I do for some products, but most of the time I prefer using a stitching pony. To hold the leather together before you start punching your holes, you're going to want to glue that together. So there are plenty of water-based adhesives, etc., that you can use to glue leather together. What I found works really well is Weldwood contact cement. This Weldwood is about $7 at Home Depot. The brushes are $1 at Home Depot, so fairly cheap. Just make sure you're in a well-ventilated area because it does have a very strong smell. So once you have your piece all stitched up and ready to go, you're going to want to finish your edges. To do that, I would recommend just some sandpaper. So this is 400 grit, Home Depot again. It's about $8 per pack, and that allows you to make sure all your leather layers are at the same, all sitting flush. And that's going to allow you to really burnish your edges well. And to do burnishing on your edges, you can either use water and then just a canvas piece. This is an old shoe bag, so really no cost there. So any piece of canvas that you have will work. And like I said, you can just put water. What I would recommend to really bring your leather craft to the next level is Tokonol. So Tokonol you can buy on Amazon. It's about $11, and you just put this on the edge. Same thing, canvas bag, rub it back and forth pretty quickly, and you'll get a really good shiny looking edge. So if you're looking to get started into leather crafting and pick up this hobby, those are some of the items that I recommend you buy first. They're more on the inexpensive side of things, so if you don't like it, it's not a total loss. All in, it's about $170 worth of equipment and materials. And definitely I would recommend looking for templates online. I have some on my website for belts right now. I plan to expand that. And what you do is just print it out on a piece of paper, cut it out with scissors or an Exacto, and then you can trace that onto your leather. I'm going to quickly run through using only the tools shown here on how I would go ahead and make a card holder. And I will also throw the free template in the description below on my website, so you can go download that and make it yourself with these tools. All of the tools that I've talked about, I'll also list in the description so that I hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I plan to release more and more content moving forward. So thank you.